What do you guys think is the most important stage of TFT? For some players, it's the late game, being able to convert that fourth into a first or that sixth into a third. For others, it's the mid game. They would argue it's probably the most confusing and difficult time to navigate because you're trying to go from that early game to end game board, but you're managing your pivots just a little too inconsistently. You don't know how much to level, how much to roll. But I would argue, compared to those two stages, the early game is not only the most important, but the most vital. I mean, those are synonyms, but I mean, you get the idea, right? Like, the early game is so important, it dictates your mid game. And that mid game will dictate your end game. So if you don't perfect your early game, everything else is going to fall apart. So in today's video, we are going to be going over one of NA's other dark horses, actually. Sure, I made a video about Juki a couple days ago, but NA actually has one more dark horse, Replay, who, surprisingly enough, is so good at TFT, he's going to Worlds. And he's going to be competing and really representing North America. So in today's video, we're going to be going over his gameplay and looking over the decision making he makes in the early game so that you can apply this into your own games as well and hopefully not fuck up your mid game and not screw up your end game. Let's get on to the video. So here we are in Replay's game, and you may have noticed that this game and VOD was also taken from the regional finals, even though my camera is kind of, covering the banner a little bit. And typically, it's actually not good practice to be VOD reviewing a game that has occurred on a different patch because the decision making from patch to patch changes. Right? If we go from a NAR meta to a Misfortune meta to a Spellslinger meta, decisions change. But surprisingly enough, and this is actually quite the exception because 13.9b and 13.10 had very little changes. Tiny changes. They're so minute that quite honestly, it's almost like we're not even on a new patch. That's how minute the changes were. So this is actually an exception to the rule where we can actually VOD review even older stuff and still garner a lot of value out of it because the decision making from this patch and the current patch, almost exactly the same. Almost exactly the same. And that is why we are here. So let's talk about it. Replay. And you might also notice something too. We are watching this VOD at regular speed. We're not watching at 2x speed. Why is that? We're watching at regular speed because Replay, like I said before in the intro, incredibly fantastic, incredibly strong early game player. He sets himself up for success so heavily throughout the early game that his mid to late game almost plays themselves out entirely. That's how strong this guy's early game is. But the problem is, surprisingly enough, he's so good at early game. His mid to late game is not as strong. It's not as fundamentally as solid compared to other pro players. And that is why we are watching this at regular speed, because we're not going to be watching the mid to late game. We'll transition into it so you can see how it plays out at the end. But that's not the focus of today's video, okay? Anyways, I paused here for a reason. The reason why I paused here is for two things. One, Wukong Parent Shop. Wukong Parent Shop. He knows for a fact he's picking that up no matter what. He knows he's probably going to sell the Ezreal or the Annie here. Depends on which way he likes to go. But he's probably going to sell one of the two to pick up the Wukong pair because he's probably thinking in his head, pairs are important. You need to prioritize the pairs. Why do we prioritize the pairs? Is because pairs and upgraded units specifically are the strongest things that you can have during Stage 2. Upgraded units are the strongest thing in Stage 2. Get that in your head. So that's why you need to prioritize holding pairs because that is really going to amplify your early game decision making. Now, what we will notice though is that after we take the orb here, we get Neela and we get Alistar. We are given an economic start. So what should we do in this scenario, right? We have Nasus paired. We have an Alistar. Ooh, really strong mascot opener, right? Shouldn't we? Oh, dude, isn't our game set? Don't we just strongboard from here? No. Immediately sells. Immediately sells everything. Actually, he sells the Pantheon as well, which is a bit of a mistake. But he does end up selling everything here to make 10. Why do we do that? We did that because even though we had a strong Alistar and a strong Nasus pair that we could have played around potentially, when you're given an advantage, you need to play to your advantage. In this case, he's given an economic advantage compared to other players. He's at a disadvantage in terms of components, but he should play to his strengths and play around the economy that he's given and work around that instead. It's like, for example, like maybe you suck at biology. You got a D in biology in high school. You got C's in chemistry. But every time you went to art class, people were like, oh my God, you're like Picasso. You're like the next Mozart of our generation, bro. Like, dude, I need you to compose this thing for my wedding because you're so good, even though you're in high school. Who the fuck's getting married? The point is, play to your strengths. Are you really going to try to become a doctor? You grew up in an Asian household. Your parents are trying to drill med school into you? No. You shouldn't, by the way. If you're in high school and you're watching this, don't do that. If you're a really great artist, don't fucking do that shit. Play to your strengths. You're going to find way more success being an artist, painting pictures, composing music pieces, fucking doodling on walls and graffitiing whatever for like local stores or whatever, you'll find way more success and money doing that than if you were to go and become a doctor, follow those med school dreams that aren't even yours, they're your parents, and you're just a shitty doctor. Some person comes into your dog ass clinic because you almost failed med school but you somehow passed because it was really pity, and then people are coming into your clinic and they're like, hey, oh, Mr. Doctor, sir, I have a broken leg, and you're like, oh god, that sounds terrible, here's some acetaminophen and a band-aid. Acetaminophen, by the way, is allergy medication. So don't, you're a shitty doctor, you wouldn't even know that, right? But there you are, handing out allergy meds to people who don't even need it. You're gonna get fired. Terrible time, so don't do that, okay? Anyways, let's roll it back. I went on a bit of a tangent here. The point is, sorry, I'm very passionate about that stuff. You know, I'm Asian, you know, it is what it is. It's the Asian American experience, all right? But anyways, I digress. Back to the game, let's reel it back, come back, all right? Bring it back, all right? We're here. What do we pick up from the shop? What do we pick up from the shop, okay? Some of you may think, like we said before I went on that tangent, pairs are important. Upgraded units are very important, right? You know what is even more important than upgraded units? Ensuring that you have a game plan and a composition ready by 2-1. What does that mean? Does that mean that you have to commit into a line immediately by 2-1? No. That's not what I mean. But what I do mean, and what I do want to emphasize, is that you should not be playing a fake-ass board at 2-1. A lot of people during the early game, during stage 1, they kind of turn their brain off. Myself included, I did this for a long time. I still do this sometimes. You kind of turn your brain off, you're not really thinking, and you're just picking up whatever strong units, whatever pairs, whatever upgrade units you get. And then you end up with like a Renekton 2, a Nasus 2, and like, I don't know, like a GP 2. It doesn't fit. You're just putting things together because they upgraded, but you have no direction. And that's actually you're gonna have a terrible time. So even though you have upgraded units, and it may be strong for like a stage or two, not even for a stage, for like a round or two. And then people also level 4, everyone's level 4. And then somebody who actually gave themselves a little bit of direction is gonna beat your board. So what is the correct option to take from here? The correct option to take from the spot and to make sure that we have some level of direction by 2-1 is Poppy Jinx. Poppy Jinx. Jinx gives us Anima. Gives us an opening for Anima. But Poppy also is great to pick up here because it gives us direction for Defender Flex. And what do I mean by Defender Flex? It means that I'm not thinking, oh, some Defender Flex frontline, like Mech frontline Garen or whatever with the Samira backline and blah, blah, blah. No. What I'm saying is that you pick up the Poppy and the Wukong here, and it still lets you pick up the Jinx, so you have the Anima opener, but you don't have to commit to it. You can also play around whatever you flex and hit on the next shop. And as we can see here, again, replay. Terrific early game sense and direction, understands what he needs to do here, does not pick up the Blitzcrank pair, picks up the Poppy, picks up the Defenders, and picks up the Jinx because he knows that he has 2 options available to him once 2-1 hits. Great stuff here. Also, by the way, really smart of him to also keep the Anima on bench rather than playing it. Why is that important? It's important because he knows he has an economic advantage. The game might give him an even larger economic advantage because a 1-component start is still an option from the spot. So he'd rather sell the Anima than the Defenders because the Defenders give him more opportunity and flex options to work around throughout the early to mid game. Right? And that's what we're going to see here. And so, unfortunately, though, doesn't get the full 20 gold start. But, I mean, hey, 2 components, can't complain. And we have a BT Slam available to us as well. Now, here we are with the 2-1 augments. What do we take from this spot? Some people will say it's not Invigorate. And it's not. Right? And we know it's not because, ooh, the stats are bad. But that's not the main reason. A lot of people will ignore augment choices just because the stats are bad. And it's true. Invigorate averages a 4.7 at the early game. But that doesn't mean you can't always take it. For example, in the early game, there are times at 2-1 where you should take Invigorate. When the hell is that? Let's say, for example, and we're going to pull up the team builder here on tactics.tools, but let's say, for example, you have a Laser Core opener. Let's say you have an opener like this where you have an Ashe 2, Renekton 2, and a Yasuo as well. And let's say you're sitting on Lee Sin pair, and if you were to take that augment, it gives you Lee Sin 2. Who wouldn't want to play this board at 2-1? You get to basically 5-streak all of stage 2 for free. And then maybe down the line, you end up playing some form of brawlers. You end up something with like the Blitzcrank on your board. You get the Vi on your board. You get the Riven on your board. You get the, you know, the Warwick on your board. And oh my god, you have a 6 brawler board. It plays itself out. It plays itself out. So don't sleep on, you know, these augments that have terrible stats and ignore them just because the stats are bad. There are going to be opportunities available to you when that's the correct decision. Obviously, in this case, it's not the case, but I wanted to just point that out because I think that is a early game fundamental that I think not enough people are aware of, and they kind of sleep on it. Next, Winds of the Wanderer. BT is actually a great stand for Winds of the Wanderer. You know that Bloodthirst is actually one of Yasuo's best items, but also because Cloak is a component for QSS, which is great for Yasuo, and Sword is a great component for Gunblade. Doesn't sound bad. The only issue is that how the fuck are we fitting this on our board? We have Winds of the Wanderer on our board, but we have no Laser Core, no Duelist. Makes no sense. So it doesn't make sense to take Winds of the Wanderer here, even though our components are great for it. So time and a half is the last option before we may decide to reroll. Should we take time and a half from this decision? From this spot, rather, sorry. Make a decision, right? Pause the video. Just say, or don't. It's a yes or no question. Should we take it? But you should think about it. Think about it first. The answer is actually yes. What? Well, we don't have any Infinity. We don't have any Sure Shot. Why would we take time and a half here? We take time and a half here because we were given an economic start. And time and a half plays into our economic advantage. It gives us money, and we can flex with the defenders. Even though we have Anima available to us, and a Jinx Augment might have been nice, but we wouldn't even get Jinx 2 from it. Silver's actually kind of nice from this spot. Plays into our economic advantage, gives us gold, lets us steamroll with the economic advantage that we have, and play to our strengths, right? Here we hit the Nasus 2. We have an Ashe in our shop. So what's our strongest board? What's our strongest board? I paused the video for you so you can think about it. What's our strongest board? I'll give you a minute. Actually, I'm not going to give you a minute. You can pause the video. What the fuck? Fuck you. I'm going to keep going. The strongest board from this spot, and I hope you thought about it though. The strongest board from our spot is leveling to 4. Which you should always do from this spot because it does not hurt your economy here. Leveling to 4, you get the same amount of interest, right? You still make 10. Level to 4. Poppy Wukong. Almost all of you got that right. Poppy Wukong. Sivir, because it's a hero augment. Nasus 2. It is not Ashe. Some of you may have said Ashe because you're thinking within the traits. And yes, even though the traits look prettier, even though 2 Sure Shot looks nicer to have than having a random Nasus 2 on your board, which has no traits, no synergies, right? But like I said before, during stage 2, one of the strongest things you can have on your board is just simply upgraded units. The raw stats, I apologize, of those units are so strong that you actually have more strength on your board by having that Nasus 2 on your board, even though it's kind of like you're playing built different, right? But again, like we said before, replay. He understands this. So he slams the sword onto the Sivir because he knows for a fact that he's going to be playing around this, and hopefully he hits a Deathblade early. But he also wants to play around his strongest board and preserve HP. Some players may not even level to 4 here because they want to preserve their economy no matter what, right? Well, the amount of HP that you save here, and you still make 10. You still make 10, by the way. The amount of HP you still save here by still making 10 and being able to level to 4 here is just way too high. There's too much value there compared to just staying to 3 and trying to just full out, maybe even lose streak. Right? And try to play to that advantage, right? You can't forfeit too much. It's a game of balance, right? That's what TFT is. You're balancing your strengths, balancing the weaknesses, balancing your options, and seeing the pros and cons and weighing them, trying to see what is the correct option, right? What is our next? I'm going to ask you the same question here. What's our strongest board? We hit a Morgana and the Rammus in our shop, which, by the way, would not have even happened had we had not level to 4 the previous round. What is our strongest board here? Give it a second. Think about it. Our strongest board, again, Ashe does not go on to the board here. Doesn't piece in. Instead, it is Rammus Morgana, drop the defenders. We're basically playing built different at this point. But again, like I said before, you need to think about what is stronger. Is a Poppy 1 Wukong 1 just because it has a little extra armor? Is that really stronger than having a Rammus and a Morgana on our board? Keep in mind, Morgana gives us armor shred, so our Sivir is doing more damage. And then the Rammus is a 3-cost threat. Why is that important? Threats are important because threats, don't think of Rammus as a 3-cost unit. You should think of Rammus as like a 3.5 cost unit. It's supposed to be slightly stronger than their 3-cost counterparts. Not as strong as a 4-cost unit, but they're like halfway there. 2, 3, 4, 5. So being able to play the Rammus on our board is really, really great. You can also think about it in terms of money. The more money you pour into your board typically means the stronger it is, right? I mean, this becomes less true as the game goes on and progresses, but in the early game, this is especially true. You know, Wukong, Poppy, cost 2 gold. Versus Rammus Morgana costs 6 gold. Surely this is stronger. Just common sense tells us that this is stronger. And because we know that they are both threats, we know that for a fact that this is in fact stronger. Now, same question again. What is our strongest board here? Do we change anything on our board? Do we pivot into double Morgana? What's our strongest board here? Well, I'm not going to pause the video for too long. I'm going to keep asking these questions though because I think it's important to think about. And this is, again, these are the exercises you need to do if you want to get better during the early game. Our strongest board here is just not changing anything. Oh, but isn't the Morgana better than the Nasus? Well, no. Like we said before, the Nasus is upgraded. And it actually serves 2 purposes compared to 1. The Morgana serves as a purpose as more backline damage and shred. The Nasus, though, has more HP than the Morgana 1 and it acts as a front line, which is something that we need to keep. Don't forget your fundamentals, your basic fundamentals. You need a front line, you need a back line. No, not enough front line, your back line is gonna suffer, right? If we had double Morgana on our board, we'd be in a bit of a bad spot because, like, we just don't have enough front line to deal with anything, right? So we need both of these on our board. And we know for a fact that because we had scouted earlier, we did not need a level to 5. Some players may have actually argued to level to 5 here to try to preserve a streak here, but we're sort of destroying our economic advantage by doing so. And we know we kind of know that we probably would not have won because we scouted the other boards. So it's a lot safer to just make 20 here instead. You may have noticed we even sold the Morgana pair, even though it was a pair, because it's a very expensive pair to hold during the early game. You could argue that you could have sold the defender pairs instead, but then your early game direction gets kind of scuffed because now you are stuck with this Nasus 2 who you don't plan on playing anyways, and that would just be a really bad time. You're losing direction. You're losing your Infinity Team direction, which would not be great, right? Here from the carousel, I mean, we know he's going to look for the sword, and if not, he's going to look for something that he can slam, right, to keep his tempo going. So the sword is obviously the best choice because of Deathblade. It works very, very well with Sivir's carry augment. It's actually her best item with the carry augment, so he can generate more and more gold, more and more economy. Now, the correct decision, obviously, here is to level to 5. I feel like I don't even have to explain that very hard. But he's about to do something that I don't 100% agree with. And I want to hear your opinion on this too. Here, Slam's Deathblade. Terrific. Really great stuff. But what does he also do? He also opens the anvil at this spot. Why does he open the anvil? He opens the anvil because he wants to try to create as much tempo as he can. Now, I don't agree with this 100%. Because this cloak, it could become a gargoyle. It could become a declaw. It could become Runaan's, right? We have a couple of good options here, but there is a world where he rolls something that is like a tear, a crit glove, a belt, and a rod. What do you do in that scenario then, right? I would argue that opening the anvil here is a bit too preemptive, and it's kind of, you're pushing your luck here a little bit because you could just wait until Krugs because you only have one component to work with for the anvil. Wait until Krugs, see what's going on, and then open the anvil. Because in that way, you have more opportunity, more things to look around and explore before slamming the stuff onto here. Obviously, he opens it here, though, because he wants to try to play tempo, which I guess it's fine. But again, I don't 100% agree with this. Again, plays the strongest board, which happens to be just that Pantheon 1, because it's stronger than a Poppy 1 or a Wukong 1. Pantheon is one of the best early game units. And as we can see here, again, exercising really, really great early game fundamentals. He actually even plays the Yasuo here that he found instead of the Pantheon, because, I mean, as common sense would say, a 2 cost is probably stronger than a 1 cost. Really great stuff here. Really, really great stuff. Here, he hits the Belveth. Obviously, our strongest board is to throw in the Belveth here. And then we're going to try to make 30. Really straightforward. Really straightforward. Really great fundamentals. We're going to fast forward here, actually. I know I said we'd watch a regular speed here, but I mean, this is the most obvious shit. Who the fuck wouldn't put a 4 coster on their board? Like, what the fuck? So, obviously, really, really great stuff. He knows exactly what he's doing here. And we're going to fast forward here throughout the fight because, like, there's not much to see here. So, now we are going into stage 3-1. And as we can see here, let's just pause for a moment and think about what we've noticed. This man keeps iterating his board to have the strongest thing that he can have on his board, even though he's basically just playing threats at the moment. But it's his strongest board, it's why he hit. Playing flexibly. And look at his HP right now. 96 HP. Goes through all stage 2, 96 HP. Look at Setsuko, 61 HP. Oh, he's open 40, he's loose streaking, but he has a plan. Oh no, of course he does. But you know why win streaking is almost always nicer than lose streaking? Even mixed streaking is sometimes almost always nicer than lose streaking. Why is that the case? The reason why mixed streaking is not actually that bad is because your HP. It's all about your HP. 61 HP after stage 2 means that your early game is going to be a lot, or rather your mid to late game is going to be a lot more punishing for even the slightest mistakes you make. At least mixed streaking, you don't have as much economy. And ideally, he would have actually won all of the stage. He didn't. Unfortunate. It happens. It's not the end of the world. Some players would FF. If their win streak was broken at 2-3, they would just FF. Some players are like that. Don't do that. It's okay to mix streak. It's fine. It happens sometimes. Look at his economy, though. Look at his spot. 96 HP. You have nothing to complain about. His early game is so strong. He gets even more economy here, surprisingly enough. Look at that. And even though he gets no components here again, and he's actually pretty behind in components compared to the rest of the lobby, he has an economic advantage, and he knows he has to play to that. So what do we do, and what can we do to emphasize our economic advantage? That is sort of the big important thing here, right? There are a couple of things that we can do, right? One of them is to roll down, right? Money means opportunity. It means potential, right? So clearly on 3-1, we're going to level to 6 here because it costs us almost no money to do so, right? So we're going to level to 6 here. And what are we going to do? What are we thinking about? We can either look for upgrades because money equals potential. And that it could be potential for upgrades, potential for levels, for extra strength. What are ways that we can exercise this economic advantage? He levels to 6 here. Makes perfect sense. And you might notice he actually techs Infinity Team onto his board here specifically, even though it's actually not his strongest board. His strongest board is Bel'Veth over the Solution 2. But he doesn't put the Bel'Veth on his board because he's tailoring his augments, which again, really, really great stuff. And this is something you need to keep in mind. Make sure you tailor your augments for 3-2. It's really important. Here, we're going to fast forward a little bit here. Tailors his augments for 3-1, going into 3-2, hoping to hit that Infinity Team spat. And, you know, maybe he doesn't. It's fine. But it's still important to tailor your augments for 3-2, even though it may not be entirely your strongest board. So here, going into 3-2, and look at his goal. He's 50 gold, 96 HP at 3-1. His spot's incredible because he's played the early game so good. What do we take from the spot? Do you take Portable, Electric Charge, or Trade Sector? Like I said before, play to your strengths. You have an economic advantage. Your combat power does not always have to come from your augments. You should have some level of combat power from your augments, don't get me wrong. But that doesn't have to be the end-all be-all. One of the ways that you can actually pump power into your board is simply just upgrading all your units. Have upgraded units, play to your strengths, and play to the best of your ability, using what is your economic advantage, your advantage that is given to you. So Trade Sector here is the best option here. Because by taking Trade Sector here, he's basically guaranteeing 10 gold now, plus more upgrades. Look at his gold, 73 gold. What's the best play here? It's the level. It's the level. So even though he doesn't have that many upgrades on his board, he has Delusion 2, Wukong 2, and the Silver 1. He's 40 gold level 7. He gets to play up a whole unit. So his board strength is not coming from his upgrades or even his augments, but rather it's coming from his units. It's coming from pure strength, raw stats from his board. And this is okay to do during the early game. And I mean, at this point, he doesn't even have to roll. He knows his board is actually pretty strong for a 3-2 board because he's basically playing up a Fawn. So what's he going to do here? He's going to sell the units on his board here. He's going to make 40. And he's 40 gold, 3-2. 40 gold, 3-2. And guess what? He's going to be able to, you know, not lose that much HP. He may mix streak throughout all of this. But at the end of the day, even if he mix streaks, that's okay. Because now, our game plan has been decided. We're level 7 at 3-2. What does this mean? What does this mean? It means that we're going to fast 8 at 4-2. We know exactly what the plan is. We're going to fast 8 at 4-2, hit everything, because 4-2 is very early for level 8, and our forecast odds are much higher than everybody else, and we have way more money to work with. So we're going to fast 8, 4-2, roll down, try to hit all our units. As we can see here, we're actually going to fast forward to 4-2, because, I mean, there's not much to talk about here, right? 4-2, we fast forward. He hits Think Fast, Battle Mage, Infinity Team Crown. I mean, I think the best players in the world would take Think Fast and try to upgrade their board. You can't see his board exactly, but Think Fast is almost always the correct option if you are really, really good at the game. If he's looking for upgrades and he has money. But, I mean, if 15 Crown is such a safer option, it makes way more sense to take it. It's so safe, right? And now we're at 4-2. And you can see we've barely lost any HP. We did mix streak a bit. You can tell by the 2 win streak, right? We mixed a little bit, but we still have a lot of our HP. But we got to just roll down here. We got to roll down. We got to hit our units. And we got to just chill, right? Hit our units, we get to roll down and hit whatever, right? We're looking for the Samira 2, we're looking for the TF 2, we're looking for the Garen 2, right? And we keep rolling down, we hit all our units, and we get priority because we were able to go to level 8 so much faster than everybody else. And with such a strong economic advantage, especially with Trade Sector as well, we're able to just find everything. We have the Sivir 2, we have the TF 2, we have the Rammus 2 that came out just for free from Trade Sector. And again, we're iterating our board to play the strongest thing. So even though we don't have the Samira exactly just yet, we have a Sivir 2, which is pretty strong, a 3-item Sivir 2. Rammus 2, Shen 2, Pantheon 2, TF 2. I mean, sure, the board isn't perfect, but it's so strong. And we've set ourselves up to basically be able to go level 9 at this point. Because now, we get to make 10 gold, and actually probably 20 gold, because this Urgot's never going on our board, unless we hit a really early Urgot 2. We'd rather just make the economy here at this point, because we're down to 10 gold. Make 20 instead, fast 9. That's our out. Now we're playing for fast 9 instead, and if you know anything about a fitting team, there are a couple of outs. We have the Ezreal 2 out. We have the Sivir 3 out as well. And we didn't go for the Sivir 3 out because we hit so little Sivers in the early game. But that's okay. Play instead for this out instead. And we're playing for the Ezreal 2 out. And we can do that. And we know that we can do that for a fact. Because, you know, we are given the opportunity to do so with such a strong economic advantage that we were able to play around. Now, as we can see here, he actually doesn't go for either of those outs and actually hits Samira 3. Very viable, very okay as well. And again, this is only possible because he was able to set himself up so well during the early game that he was able to bring himself into a position where, sure, he didn't find the Ezreal 2-win condition, but he found a Samira 3-win condition instead. And sure enough, as we will soon see, that is enough. He's 54 HP in this lobby, for God's sake, and he's able to do so. And if you watch the whole VOD, you'll notice that like he does high roll a bit in this game. But regardless, you can't argue that the main takeaway is that, hey, like, he did a fantastic job playing around his economic advantage in the early game that set himself up for the late game in order to win out the entire match. Very well played by him, and I hope you learned something today. Take care, guys. Happy climbing.